Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our 5th episode of Mark's Side of the Ring. I am your host, Miguel Minetti, alongside my co-host, Nick Fiorentino. Nick, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing all right. It's been a while since we did one of these morning shows. I'm used to the evening shows, so I'm still kind of waking up.
Looks like Nick is still half awake, half asleep there as we do our Saturday morning this week. So, Nick, being that it's before noon, I got to ask, what are you drinking this morning, my friend?
Well, I know the saying is it's 5 o'clock somewhere, but I'm going with iced coffee to try to wake up.
And I'm assuming it's spiked, right? What do you got? At least a little Bailey's in there or something?
Nope, just my pumpkin spice creamer because I'm as basic as they get. I love pumpkin everything, so.
Well, something basic that we don't have for you today is a loaded show with a lot of really good topics here in mind. Obviously, we're coming up on the heels of our next WWE pay-per-view, Clash of Champions, and make sure you guys tune in next week as we do our Clash of Champions prediction show. But for today, I want to kick off, obviously, our topics with probably what I consider to be the biggest headline going into the pay-per-view next Sunday, and that's the Roman Reigns and Jey Uso storyline. So, obviously, I'm sure a lot of our fans that watch the show know what's going on, but just to quickly recap, Jey Uso, Roman Reigns' cousin, did become the #1 contender about 2 weeks ago to face Roman for the Universal Championship next Sunday at Clash of Champions. But as you've been seeing the last couple of weeks or so, it looks like that Roman and Uso have been kind of teaming up and been having some tag matches together. What happened 2 weeks ago on SmackDown was they took on King Corbin and Sheamus, and Uso did the match himself pretty much the entire fight until the last couple minutes or so when Roman Reigns came out and took the pinfall in order to secure the victory for the team. This past week on Friday Night SmackDown, it was a Samoan street fight. So same opponents, right, against Sheamus and King Corbin. This time Roman Reigns fought the entire match, and Uso ended up securing the victory. So I don't know. I thought it's been pretty cool going on the last 2 weeks, and I certainly want to get my thoughts in there. But, Nick, I'm going to kick it to you. What are your thoughts on this whole angle so far, and are you excited for this match coming up next week?
It's not, and let me preface it. I know I've been pretty vocal over the last couple episodes on this match. It's not that I don't think it's going to be a good match. It's not that I think that both wrestlers aren't super talented. I just don't I feel like wrestling is at its best when it's unpredictable. I think that this match, the finish is telegraphed a mile away. I mean, Roman Reigns is going to win the match. They're not going to give the championship belt to a tag team wrestler who's still in a tag team. And I know we talked last week, and Fred mentioned and Tim mentioned that you guys, and even I think you agreed to a point where you could see him laying down and kind of starting a stable. That's a cool way to end a Monday Night Raw, like they did with DX way back when, and like they did with Hogan and Nash and Nitro. That's not a way to end a pay-per-view or even have a pay-per-view match. Somebody's not laying down. I do think it's possible that the other Uso, maybe Roman is beating him up so bad that his partner comes out to like say, hey, kind of calm down, and then he turns on him and he's the one that aligns himself with Roman. I could see that being like a swerve. It, like I said, I just think that this is a feud that could have just been settled on SmackDown over a couple weeks on SmackDown. I don't necessarily see him as a viable opponent for Roman Reigns. I see no threat to Roman losing his title.
So I'm going to disagree with you on that, right? Because even though I think everyone knows the outcome, right? Everyone knows that Roman Reigns is going to retain the Universal Championship some way, somehow on next Sunday, right, at Clash of Champions. I think the more important focus of the match is how is it going to play out, right? How is the match going to end? Because, you know, like I mentioned 2 weeks ago, I mean, there's a couple different scenarios. I personally think the best scenario would be Jey Uso going into the match really hyped, right? You saw the promos the last couple of weeks or so. Roman Reigns 2 weeks ago telling him, hey, you know, it's great that you got the spot. It's great that you got this main event. You're going to get some extra money for your family. But he said those words, I need to retain. I'm going to retain the Universal Championship, next at Clash of Champions. So I think the best scenario would be the match starts. You see Uso really excited, getting ready to go, getting ready as the bell rings. And Roman Reigns looks at him and says, you need to do what's right for this family. Right? And I'm not saying this is going to happen, but in my opinion, I think this would be the best outcome is that he tells Uso to lay down for him, puts a leg over right over his chest, pins him 1, 2, 3, and the match ends. And then you just see a conflicted Jey Uso kind of standing next to Roman Reigns and Paul Heyman as the Bloodline Empire starts to take foot. So I don't know why you're not a fan of that. I think that's honestly the best thing to do, because I think over the next couple months now, what you can do is you can add people like Nia Jax, you can add people like Tamina Snuka, whoever the hell else is in that family that's currently in WWE. I think there's a couple guys in developmental that could come up that are like their, seventh cousins or what have you, all culminating one day to The Rock returning and basically saying, hey, you've pretty much, mesmerized and turned our entire family here. I'm going to do what's right for this family because you and Paul Heyman have been an embarrassment to the Samoan legacy. So
what you're saying makes a lot of sense, and I would be all for that. And I know that The Rock and Roman Reigns are interested in having a WrestleMania match, and maybe that's where we go this year with a live crowd, hopefully. But it goes to my point, and again, all of that can still happen without this match being a pay-per-view championship match. I mean, it could be a Monday Night Raw match. We've seen matches where they kind of, and maybe I'm in the minority, but for whatever reason, when I think of this match, I think back to when Triple H fought Shelton Benjamin for the title, and it was on Monday Night Raw. This was during the time where they all got title matches against Triple H. So they all got to be GM for a night. And Shelton Benjamin and Triple H had this great match. And like going into the match, I was like, Triple H isn't losing the belt to Shelton Benjamin. But the match was so good. I don't know if you remember, but the match was so good. And at that point, Shelton Benjamin was young, so he was a high flyer. And like halfway through the match, I was like, oh man, how cool would it be if they gave it to him for a week? I wouldn't be completely opposed to if that happens and Uso's able to win the belt for like the shock factor of it all, and then maybe the next week on SmackDown him say, you need to give me the belt back, like you need to lay down and do what's right for the family, kind of similar to what you're saying, and then maybe he does it, or maybe he fights Roman again, and that's when his partner turns on him and does something. I would sooner, thinking this through in my head as we're talking, I would sooner rather that happen. Like I don't think there's any shame in him beating Roman Reigns. I just don't think it's going to happen, but that would be shock, and then you could still carry the storyline out the way that you want it to be carried out, with all of the Samoans kind of getting together, doing it 1 week later on SmackDown. I don't know. I mean, it's an interesting storyline. I'm not against it. I just, at this current moment, I would be betting heavy favorite on Roman Reigns to retain, and anytime that's the case, it's just there's no point in watching it if I know what's going to happen.
Well, yeah, and I'm not debating that Roman's going to not retain the title. I think it's a 99.9% lock, right? And we'll give our predictions, obviously, next week when we do the prediction show for Clash of Champions. But, I think what's more intriguing is, the development of this story. There's just no way they're just going to have, in my opinion, there's just no way they're going to have a straight-up wrestling match. I think there's just a lot going on, right? You see their facial expressions, especially Roman Reigns, and that's part of the reason why I've loved this development over the last 3 weeks or so is you see on SmackDown last night, Roman and Jey Uso secure the victory. At first, Roman's pissed off at Jey, like, why did you take that pinfall? Like, it's my spotlight, right? And that's what I love about the heel turn of Roman. Then you see Jey Uso, pretty all happy-go-lucky and giddy. He's like, come on, man, come on, we won. And then you see him and Roman kind of like shake hands, give each other a hug. Uso exits the ring first. Roman's all smiles, and all of a sudden Paul Heyman gets in the ring, and you just see Roman staring a hole through Jey Uso. So, again, right?
I like that.
I do.
Yeah, I do too. I like that too. The only other thing I would say on Roman Reigns as we come to a close on the topic is if he's going to be a heel, and I think we were all in favor of the heel Roman Reigns, I don't know how much heat he's going to get by going over the same, this is my yard, this is my island, this is my this is my that. I mean, he did that already as a good guy. I mean, Eric Bischoff tweeted yesterday saying, like, something to the effect of, like, what kind of heat is this going to draw? Like, saying that this is, like, you've been saying it the whole time. We know it's your yard. You beat The Undertaker, like, 4 years ago. We know. We get it. It's just, I would think of different things. Maybe beating the hell out of his own family will help. But he needs to come up with something different than this is my yard. We know it's your yard, Roman.
I agree with that. I think the biggest thing, right, the biggest kind of question mark we're going to see next week is, if you think about it, this is going to be the first match that Roman has against Uso that's going to be a full-length match. He came back at SummerSlam. A week later, he comes out on Payback, wins the title, but he's only in the match for a minute or two, right? He comes out at the very end. His next match is the tag match with Uso, right, against Corbin and Sheamus. Comes out the last minute. Last night on SmackDown, finally has a match, goes about 5 minutes or so. Doesn't really do much except, spear Sheamus through a barricade, which is always an awesome visual. This is the first time we're going to see a full-length match since he's been back, right, since before COVID hit. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how Roman kind of shifts gears in the ring, more so than maybe what he says on the mic. Because I agree, he can't keep saying this is my yard, and I think that's why he brought in Paul Heyman, right? I think Paul Heyman's going to do a majority of the talking, but it's going to be a little bit of a different relationship than Lesnar and Heyman have, because Lesnar does 0% of the talking, or maybe 1% of the talking, whereas Roman's probably going to do about 20% of the talking, so a little more than Brock. But I'm excited for this match. I'm curious to see where it goes. Obviously, next Sunday. I want to kind of shift gears and talk about something else that I know you and I have talked about offline. I want to get your thoughts on tape here as we record this podcast, and that's around how impressed, dude, have you been with Dominic Mysterio? Right, he's been in a competitor now for about a month or 2 months now since SummerSlam, and this guy, in my opinion, just putting on 4.5 to 5-star matches every time he goes out there. What do you think?
I think he's done great. I mean, he's very, very, very good wrestler. And the match we had, the steel cage match, was awesome. I think that storyline is getting close to kind of running its course, and I think we're nearing the end of it. It looks like there's going to be some kind of, like, he's teaming up in a tag team match. I didn't see who his partner was, but he's teaming up with somebody in a tag team triple threat match, which should be pretty good. But we'll see. I mean, I think he's been doing a really nice job. I just think until Mysterio is healthy, I don't know what more they can do with this storyline. He's already lost to him a couple times, he being Seth Rollins. So I'm not sure what they can do left.
But I want to ask you, more importantly than that, right? And I agree with everything you're saying. But I mean, did you ever expect Dominic Mysterio to come out swinging the way he's been swinging in the ring?
No, I mentioned on our previous podcast that during one of the storylines, during the interview that they had at their house, and I noted the little subtle, like, look at the camera that Dominic gave, where he looked like he wanted to rip a hole through Seth Rollins, and I made mention to that, and he's kind of fulfilled that. Like, he's beat the hell out of Seth Rollins. I mean, it's funny how, like, little things like that can kind of change a perception. But I do think that the matches that he's had are entertaining, and I like to see where they go with him in other storylines. You had mentioned him turning heel, maybe, and fighting his father. Who knows? But it's he definitely is a talented wrestler, and he's in here for the long haul. I know we've questioned before, what his contract is or what he's going to do after. He can be a player for a bit.
I think on Monday was an interesting development, right? The steel cage match that he had against Seth Rollins, and Murphy, right? One of Seth's quote unquote disciples, kind of got his ass kicked by Seth for not doing what Seth wanted him to do. He's laying kind of ringside next to the kind of head against the cage, and Dominic's sister, Aaliyah, comes over and kind of makes sure that Murphy's okay. So I don't know. Did you kind of pick up on that? And if so, what do you think about that development?
I think they're kind of playing what Seth's next storyline is going to be, is probably a feud with Murphy. And you got to give it to a guy like Seth Rollins, who's really a main event, like arguably one of the best wrestlers, performers on Monday Night Raw. And here he is for half of the year having matches against Dominic Mysterio and most likely Buddy Murphy. I mean, he's been out of the main event picture for months now, and it looks like it's not going to go away anytime soon. And it's nice for a guy like him to be able to do that kind of stuff. I mean, he's good enough to do that and fight these mid-carders, and that, I'm not saying that to be insulting, and he can always come back into the main event picture when the time's right. But he's been a great wrestler. I mean, his matches this year, getting the people over that he needs to get over, I think he at least deserves consideration for Wrestler of the Year for sure.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I always thought Seth was entertaining. I think he definitely makes a better heel than obviously babyface. This feud with the Mysterios have been going on since what? Since May or something like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, maybe it's finally starting to kind of get there. But you got to give him the kudos. You got to give kudos to the guy for being able to hold together a storyline for 4 or 5 months in 2020, where people were just so eager to want to kind of turn the page and get to the next thing. I think for Seth, it's about, like you said, maybe moving on to someone like Murphy, right? Maybe just kind of saying, hey, you're out of here. I'm going solo again. And then after taking out Murphy, which he probably most likely will do, where does Seth go next from here, right? I could see him going back into the title picture, especially if Drew McIntyre retains the belt, which, we can get into later and talk about what's going to happen with him and Orton at Clash of Champions. And I know we'll give that next week, but, let's pretend, play fantasy booker here, that McIntyre retains the belt. Seth Rollins did already face him. I think it was the first pay-per-view post WrestleMania, in the COVID era in the Performance Center. Obviously lost the match, but
we're not counting the Big Show though, right?
Oh yeah, good point. Second title defense. But the thing is, right? The question is, has Seth gained more momentum since that last time he faced Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship? Or, right, another possibility is, and I'm not sure if they're going to do it this year, but usually now with, October coming up in next month, they're talking about obviously doing a shuffle for the draft. So maybe he finishes up his feud with Murphy and then maybe gets traded to Friday Night SmackDown or drafted to Friday Night SmackDown, which in my opinion could be a fresh scene for him, right? But the thing is, he'd go right into the title picture, and you're not going to do a heel versus heel with Roman and Seth Rollins. So
no, yeah.
There's a lot of possibilities they can go with that. But, yeah, honestly, I'm impressed, too, with Dom. I never thought in a million years. I think the first time we saw him in the ring was when it was Mysterio versus Brock at Survivor Series last year. And, right, Dom Mysterio tries to get involved. And I remember leading up to the match, Brock had beaten the shit out of him, right? I think he gave him 5 and onto like the staircase or onto the barricade or something like that. Dom Mysterio gets into the ring at Survivor Series, does a 619 on Brock, does a frog splash on him, but then I think Brock ends up immediately F5ing him and Ray. But I never thought in a million years that Dom Mysterio would be able to be the competitor that he is, and I truly have been so impressed since his debut. So
absolutely, yeah, he's been great.
Yeah, so I'm excited to see what happens next. I know Clash of Champions is usually an all-championship pay-per-view, but I'm gonna get your quick thoughts on this. You think there's an opportunity for Dom to compete, even if it's in a non-title match against Seth again, or what would you do if you were booking the pay-per-view?
Well, when is that number one contender ladder match, or not ladder match? When is that triple threat number one contender tag team match happening? Because if they win that and it's before Clash of Champions, then maybe they do fight the Street Profits for the title, which could be like a high-flying affair. I just don't know when that match. I saw it briefly last night, and I had an eventful day yesterday, so I wasn't really focused on what was going on WWE Twitter, but it does look like there's some kind of triple threat tag match that he's involved in. And then we'll see what happens. Maybe, if they win that, maybe he is in the match for the tag titles. And that could be a way to get him out of the Seth Rollins storyline.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I guess that's a good point, right? He could be kind of shifting gears and moving on. Maybe this steel cage match was kind of the closure against Seth Rollins. But I'm curious to see where Dom Mysterio kind of goes off. You think this guy has any chance of being a future WWE or Universal Champion?
Well, never say never. I don't know. Right now I would say no. I don't see it, but would I be shocked? No, I would. Nothing in WWE shocks me.
What if Otis won the WWE Championship? That wouldn't shock you?
Otis might win. He's got the money in the bank. Money in the bank. Unless he gets sued by The Miz, which happened last night in a pretty ridiculous storyline that I don't think we're going to get too much into. But you never know. I mean, I think. Probably one of the more shocking, not counting Brock Lesnar beating The Undertaker at WrestleMania 30, was the guy, I want to say Daivari, but I know his name is not Daivari, the guy that beat Randy Orton for the title a couple of years ago. Jinder Mahal. Sorry, I just couldn't think of his name. Again, it's early in the morning, folks. But yeah, Jinder Mahal. When he won against Randy Orton, that was a truly shocking moment. and I never thought that I would ever see Jinder Mahal as champion. So never say never.
Yeah, I guess anything's possible.
Yeah.
I want to talk about another match that's going to happen, and again, we'll get more involved in it next week. But dude, have you been loving the whole double Intercontinental Championship match that's been going on back on Friday Night SmackDown? Because I'll kind of kick off my thoughts on this. I think it's incredible. Sami Zayn is definitely one of the most obnoxious, amazing heels currently in WWE. Guy comes out, also being gone for 6 months due to COVID reasons, comes back, says, hey, I never lost this Intercontinental Championship. AJ Styles, Jeff Hardy, you two can battle each other all you want, but I'm the true Intercontinental Champion. Last night on SmackDown, right, you had Sami Zayn versus AJ Styles in a non-title match. And Jeff Hardy comes out. They're beating the piss out of each other, all three of them. And then finally Jeff Hardy says, you know what? Let's put both of our belts on the line to see who's the true Intercontinental Champion, and let's do it in a ladder match. So if you're thinking double Intercontinental Championship ladder match, you're thinking WrestleMania 10, right? Shawn Michaels versus Razor Ramon. You think there's any possibility that this could be even come close to as good of a match as Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon had?
Oh, I think it'll be much better. Here's the thing about that first ladder match, or at least the first one on a WWE pay-per-view. I think you can argue to a strong point that it's one of the worst ladder matches of all time. I mean, there was no real high, I shouldn't say worse, but it's not one of like the most memorable due to the fact that there was no real high-flying move. I mean, what was the most high-flying move that happened in that match at WrestleMania 10? Shawn Michaels did a body smash, off the top of the ladder onto Razor.
Yeah.
But we're talking, it's not fair to those two guys. For that time, it was one of the greatest matches you've ever seen. But just due to the sheer evolution of professional wrestling and the high flyers and the more athleticism that they have now, there's countless ladder matches that have been better just due to the crazy stuff that they do with the ladders. So I think that this match is going to be far exceed. I mean, I think it's going to be a great match between the two. And you mentioned Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon, and if it can live up to that, I think arguably you can make the argument that ladder match wasn't one of the best ladder matches. It was great for that time, but obviously at the time of WrestleMania 10, they weren't doing, a lot of high spots with the ladder. They were utilizing the ladder a little bit, but it really wasn't. I mean, the biggest move was Shawn Michaels jumping off for a splash on Razor, using the ladder. Fast forward to today, and obviously we've seen the things that they can do with a ladder, which is, super impressive. So I do think that this match is going to steal the show for the pay-per-view. I mean, it's going to be a tremendous match. I hope, and we'll talk about predictions next week, but I hope they let Sami Zayn, reclaim his true title and be the champion, because I do like his character right now, currently being that, like, asshole character. But we'll see what happens. But it's going to be a great match. There's no doubt in my mind.
So you mentioned that the Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon ladder match from obviously 26 years ago, whatever, was technically speaking not the best match. So I'm going to put you on the spot here since we're talking about ladder matches. What's your favorite ladder match of all time? True ladder match, not a TLC.
I'll go, since you said, and this was without any kind of research, one match sticks out to me as being a super entertaining match, and I'm not even sure I'm sure you've seen it, but it was when Christian and RVD had their ladder match for the title to close out a Monday Night Raw. This is when, the years of Stone Cold being the commissioner or the GM. But those two had an incredible ladder match, one that I'll always remember. I'm going to go with that off the top of my head. That match was really entertaining. I'm sure there's other ones that if I deep think, I'll say, oh, this match was great too. But if you're going true one-on-one or true triple threat ladder matches, not counting like the TLCs or not counting, the Money in the Banks and all of that stuff, that was a really entertaining match.
I'll give you one that you're going to say is probably really great. Remember Jericho versus Shawn Michaels? No Mercy,
yeah.
2008?
Yeah, that was a good one too. Yeah, I was thinking that one as well. That was good.
Off the top of my head, that one, or what? Benoit versus Kurt Angle was the match? No, Benoit versus Royal Rumble 2001. I think it was Benoit versus Kurt Angle. If you remember that one, that was a really good one as well too. But yeah, nonetheless, I think the match is going to be exciting. The triple threat ladder match. I'm excited to see. I like the angle they've been doing with the 2 Intercontinental Championships, and I'll wait. I know you already gave spoiler alert. You want Sami Zayn to win but I'll give my predictions next week on that.
It doesn't mean that I think he's going to win. It just means that
True.
I hope that he wins.
We should probably put a little money on this, right, to make it even more fun. A little side bet, you and I.
Maybe do a shot to whoever gets the, or is that a different show?
Wrong show. I mean, maybe we'll do a shot though, but I want to kind of shift gears to the other wrestling company on the spectrum, right? Which is AEW, and kind of just talk about some things that have been happening there. I noticed by a week ago or so, but obviously one of the shocking new additions to the AEW roster was the artist formerly known as Rusev, now called Miro, which is his real name. What did you think when you saw him come out for the first time last week as what's his name's best man?
Well, it's funny you mentioned. So when we were watching, or we were finishing up our podcast, the four of us, and Fred mentioned right after the podcast the breaking news that Miro Rusev finally joined AEW, which I think we all thought was going to happen. I mean, he's entirely too talented. I've obviously mentioned multiple times about wanting him to go to AEW. I picked him for the Battle Royal for the AEW pay-per-view, but I'm not a huge fan of coming out with the blonde hair. I didn't really necessarily like that look, but the guy's in tremendous shape and continues to. These guys that are on quarantine or not doing anything clearly or just working out, because he also was in tremendous shape. I think he's super talented. He's a main event guy on any promotion, not WWE, or at least he was for a bit until he kind of went away. But I'm looking forward to seeing where they go with him. I think he's a future AEW champion, no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, I think WWE dropped the ball with him, and they started super hot with him, right? We came out about 6-7 years ago. He debuted at the Royal Rumble 2014, which coincidentally was Punk's last ever match in WWE. Had a really great showing there, strong showing. The next year at WrestleMania took on John Cena, right, in a one-on-one match. I mean, it doesn't get any more high profile than that. But then for years after, right, he was in the League of Nations, which was garbage. He was doing nothing for a while, just kind of farting around with Lana type shit. So,
well, he did the Rusev Day thing, which got super over, but
right.
Then WWE just didn't want to do anything with it. I guess I don't know. I don't blame WWE for not. I mean, WWE has so many people.
Yeah,
it's hard to find all of these great people, but I think a smaller company like AEW is great for wrestlers like this. I mean, we've seen multiple people that WWE quote unquote dropped the ball on and then came back. One of the current champions right now, Drew McIntyre, they dropped the ball on, and he went out and got over somewhere else and came back, and now he's a champ. So I don't think we've seen the last of Rusev in WWE, but I think Rusev is a tremendous talent, Miro, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in AEW. I do believe he will be a champ.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a strong showing in AEW. Do you think that this kind of, and I don't want to say opens the door because guys have already gone, but do you think we're going to start to see more talent from WWE start heading over to AEW, or do you think they're going to kind of draw a line in the sand at this point?
I think it's over quite a bit. Yeah, I think there's going to continue to be rumors now too. I mean, we heard the rumor, and I know Ricochet kind of deflected it and said it's not true, but now you had Ricochet, as a rumor when his contract is up of going somewhere. We know Renee Young is going there. It's only a matter of time, I'm sure. But AJ Styles was recently interviewed and said that there were talks. They never got to money, but him and the Bucks are good friends.
Right.
I mean, that would be a huge get, but I don't think it's the last of people from WWE going to AEW. I think that this is one of the benefits of having two big companies like WWE and WCW back in the day, is that it creates competition, even though they'll probably never be to the level of the true WWE universe. When wrestlers have options and can go to different places, it makes WWE want to separate themselves from AEW. Like, you want to stay with us because of X, Y, and Z, and AEW the same thing. So it'll be interesting to see. But I do like Miro being in AEW.
You think we're going to get to a point where we see the other side of the coin, where somebody from AEW jumps ship to WWE, like a true homegrown talent from there?
I don't know. I'm not with the homegrown talents that they have right now, because I don't think MJF works in WWE, and Sammy Guevara is not going, and most of the other guys, I mean, Kenny Omega, and those guys, I don't see them jumping ship now. Young Bucks, I don't know. I doubt it.
Yeah, I wonder. I mean, this is probably years down the road, but I wonder who would be the first actual person from AEW. And when I say homegrown talent, I just mean somebody that wasn't in WWE or wasn't a star. So not Moxley and not Jericho, because I'm curious to see who would be the first one to go.
If I had to bet money, I would bet it will be a female wrestler.
Oh yeah.
But I can't picture any of the male superstars right now jumping over. It would be one of the female superstars, I think, and make a name for themselves over in WWE.
Could be Britt Baker if she wants to be closer to Adam Cole, right? She could do well in NXT.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm curious to see where it happens with Miro. It's going to be weird not calling him Rusev, right? I feel like normally you get used to the name change pretty quickly, but I just want to keep calling him Rusev. But I guess maybe
Miro Day doesn't have a good ring to it.
No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. I know that's his real name, so you can't blame the guy. But maybe changing the blonde hair will kind of force me to start calling him Miro because he's no longer Rusev. The guy, like you said earlier, though, the guy's had a complete transformation body-wise. I mean, he was a little overweight when he first came into WWE, and now he's shredded beyond belief. Yeah. So curious to see what happens. I want to get your take on something else in the AEW world. And, dude, I don't know. And I'm not trying to bash this company because I do like them, right? Regardless of what your boy Tim or other people say. But is it just me, or is there a million factions in AEW, right? More so than WWE. I know they joke about all the time WWE has pointless tag team matches and strange bedfellow tag matches and 3-on-3s, blah, 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 blah. But if there's going to be a stigmatism for AEW right off the bat, I'm going to go ahead and go on a limb here and say they have more factions than I've ever seen in that company before. Do you agree with me on that?
It does seem like there's a lot, and it can become a little confusing after a while. It kind of goes along with like the 8-man tag matches that seem to be a staple for AEW television, but I don't know. There's a lot of factions right now, and they all seem to be linking up with somebody. I would kind of lessen that. It almost feels like they try to be too much like 80s/early 90s WWF, where like you had the Heenan family, and like Jimmy Hart came out with like 30 different wrestlers, and it just like everybody was kind of clicked together. Everybody had a manager, and I'm okay with that. But sometimes less is more, and kind of cutting back on that I think would be a pretty good thing.
I was trying to think off the top of my head how many factions I can name without even doing any type of research, right? You got the Dark Order, the Inner Circle, Best Friends, Private Party, whatever the Eddie Kingston and Butch and the Blade are doing. I mean, like, there's literally 100 factions in this company. Whatever Jake the Snake's team is. Oh, Taz's team. Taz has, like, 4 guys now, Cage and Ricky Starks, and I think he just brought on some girl. I mean, there's literally more factions than I've ever seen in a company before, which I'm not saying is a bad thing, but at some point it gets confusing. You don't know who belongs to which stable. You don't know who the hell is challenging for what title, tag titles or what have you, because there's a million tag teams in that company. So I don't know. Not a big fan of that, but I'm sure they'll get it together. They've been doing some pretty solid stuff. Did you get a chance to check out that street fight between, oh my God, what the hell are their names? Jericho's boys last week on Dynamite. That was a pretty good match. If you got a chance.
I didn't watch it yet. No, I heard it was really good, but I didn't watch it.
Yeah, so they're doing some really good stuff in AEW. I'm curious to see how that continues on. The one other point I'll make about the factions here is probably the number one faction, which is the Dark Order, right? In my opinion, at least. You got Mr. Brody Lee, who's the TNT champion. I think this guy, and I know we talked about this a couple weeks ago, this guy's totally money. And, I'm kind of pissed that Vince didn't see it years ago when he went up to Vince, was like, hey, I don't know if you heard his podcast on Jericho, but he basically begged Vince. He's like, dude, I don't want to play this Southern draw gimmick anymore. Like, I'm so much more than that. I'm from Rochester, New York. Like, come on. And Vince was just like, nah. You're going to be from the woods in Alabama or wherever the hell he was billed from. And he's like, all right, whatever. I got to do what I got to do. But this guy's money. And I would hope that he's going to hold on to that TNT championship for quite a while, because I really believe this guy is a future AEW world champion. You agree with that statement?
Absolutely, yeah. I think all three of the Wyatt, and I like Eric Rowan too, even though he's not in the picture right now. But I think they were all future champions. I think they're all great. They all were good workers. They're big. They look the part. I mean, they all can do a lot of things. So yeah, I agree 100%.
Well, so the reason I asked that, right, and I want to kind of shift gears now to our last topic here that we're going to talk about and spend some time on it, is we both saw on social media that our boy CM Punk recently put out a statement saying there is no next true star in wrestling. So, with maybe not Brody Lee being in mind, but kind of on the topic of, who's going to be the next breakout star in the company. Do you agree with Punk's statement? Do you not see the next John Cena or the next Hulk Hogan or Rock or Stone Cold Steve Austin in either WWE or AEW?
I think the point that CM Punk was making is an accurate statement, but I don't think that it's due to anything other than if you look at like the biggest stars in WWF history, you go Hulk Hogan to kind of start. Then you didn't see somebody of the popularity of Hulk Hogan until Stone Cold Steve Austin. So you're talking about maybe a 4 or 5 year gap between the two. Then you had John Cena is really the biggest star. I'm not going to count The Rock because even though The Rock at his biggest, and he's a huge star now, but The Rock wasn't the biggest star when The Rock was a wrestler. Stone Cold Steve Austin was.
Right.
Then you go to John Cena, who came out or was kind of, I guess, the WrestleMania 19 was Cena was coming out doing interviews, but Austin was still on the show in his last match. Then you have Cena. The first time we ever really saw the two biggest stars, these guys that we would consider the biggest stars kind of transitioning into each other is Cena into Roman Reigns, who I think is the next one. So I don't see the next big star right now. I think it currently is Roman Reigns. But it's not to say that 2 or 3 years from now we won't get that next big star. We'll see. I mean, I don't think, and Cena needed a complete character change. Like the Cena that came out against Kurt Angle, did you picture him being a future star? No. Ruthless aggression? No. He had to get into the Eminem rapping gimmick, which got over big time, and then he got into the hustle, loyalty, and respect John Cena that everybody shit all over. But he, we'll see. I agree with CM Punk, but I don't think that it's a CM Punk being bitter statement or anything like that. I just think it's not time yet. Right now, Roman Reigns it's his yard, haha, and I don't think there's anybody else that's coming along anytime soon.
Is it possible for Roman to be the biggest star in the company as a heel?
No.
Got to be
no, because nobody's ever going to be as big as Stone Cold Steve Austin.
No, what I mean is, can you truly be the face of the company as a heel?
Oh, I get what you're saying. Yeah, I think he's just the biggest star. And in 2020, it seems like the best good guys eventually get booed by the fans anyway. It's just the way that it kind of works, and we saw that with Cena. Roman Reigns is the biggest star in WWE right now. No doubt. Whether he's a heel, whether he's a face, he's the biggest star. Like, people want to watch him, even though they say that they don't want to watch him. The ratings, the house shows, everything shows that people want to watch him.
Yeah, if you see Friday Night SmackDown's ratings, they've gone up tremendously actually since Roman returned. So
yeah, but everybody boos him, so it's funny how that works.
If Punk comes back, right, which obviously I know we're all praying for him to come back, you think he could go on a 5-year run where to solidify himself as probably one of the biggest stars of all time, if he's not so already?
He's had some of the biggest moments of all time, but he's not somebody that can get into that. I don't know what it is that you have to be to get into that pantheon of being like one of the all-time like legends, but and that's a topic for another day. But no, I don't see him ever being to the level of Hulk Hogan, John Cena, Austin, Bret Hart in Europe, some of these guys that are just like super, super over. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, I was thinking that same question, right? Like, what does it take in order to kind of break through that ceiling to become, I don't know, mega star level? Like, what do they have to do? I mean, is it just the fact that in 2020 there's just so much talent nowadays that they can't literally focus on just one guy? Because honestly, I feel like growing up, right, we both grew up during the Attitude Era. with Austin, I mean, he was featured in 3 or 4 segments every Monday Night Raw, right? And then when they opened up SmackDown, he was on every SmackDown as well too. So I mean, what does it take in order to get to that true level? Because for Cena, I don't know, the guy was around for 17 years before he kind of took his long hiatus now back into Hollywood. So I feel like maybe if Cena wasn't around for that long, right, he spent more time in the ring than any of those guys, including Hogan, right, consistently. Would Cena have ever been that level? Would he have ever gotten as big as Austin or Hogan did? Because I think it's safe to say that Cena is definitely probably the 3rd biggest star in WWE history. But would he have ever gotten to that level if it wasn't for his longevity in the ring, right?
Yeah, he was. I mean, he was so over too, especially with kids and women. Obviously, The Rock's made that joke like a million times. So as other people. But I would argue that due to the longevity, and of course, Austin got hurt and Hogan split. Thinking that he was too old, and then redefined himself in the NWO as a heel. But I would argue Cena is the biggest star in the history of the company, just because of the fact that he's been there the longest. He was the poster child. I mean, he's just what you would want from a flagship. The star of the flagship company. I would go with Cena, but I don't know. I mean, it's clearly not their finishing moves or their move sets, because none of them have had super. I mean, the stunner was cool, but a leg drop, basically the Doomsday device. Or Death Valley Driver, sorry, for Cena's finisher. It's just not the big move set. Roman uses a spear, or a Superman punch, so it's not like having a cool move set. I don't know. I guess it's a little bit of the look, a little bit of like what's going on at that time. I mean, WWE was super Americana in the early '90s, so Hogan worked. Obviously, the greatest storyline of all time is Austin, fucking with Vince, his boss. I don't know. I think it's a little mixture of the storyline, the look, and what the people like at that time.
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of different factors. So it remains to be seen who's the next megastar. You can't discount Triple H though. Probably.
No, we can. We can discount Triple H. Almost immediately. We can discount Triple H.
Real quick, I want to get one last quick thought. We're just going to make this a quick thought here. So the Thunderdome era has been going on for a solid almost month now. And you and I have been texting about it, and we've been watching the Raws and SmackDowns and the pay-per-views. What's one thing you don't like about the Thunderdome era? Like, if there's one thing you could change about it, what would it be? Or if not?
I've mentioned it multiple times. I think the name is stupid, and I think that I don't like. And I wasn't a fan when they were doing it with the live crowd. It's almost like they had the Brock Lesnar guy when he broke the streak, and everybody knows who I'm talking about. His fan reaction, and obviously the Miz girl fan reaction was cool too. But they go to the well too many times, like WWE typically does. Like I don't need fan reaction after every move. Like, the reason why those two things were cool was nobody really expected The Miz to ever be a champion. And he did. In that girl, that was just the perfect timing. And nobody thought that Brock Lesnar was going to be, The Undertaker at WrestleMania 30. So that was a huge moment and needed like a fan reaction. I don't need fan reactions after every single match, after every single move. Like, it's tiresome, but it's even worse in the Thunderdome on a monitor. Like, I definitely don't need to see fan reactions then. Like, just stop.
Sure. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a cool era. I know they're only going to be doing it for another month, so I'm curious to see what happens on November 1st when that contract expires, if they renew it, or I pray to God some actual live fans can come back, but that's definitely a topic for another day. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun, Nick, and that's all the time that we have for today. Before we go, though, I just want to quickly plug, obviously, to find us. You can find us on multiple outlets, including iTunes, YouTube, the podcast app on both iPhone and Android devices. You can find all of us on social media at the TruExact Radio Team. We have these nice, sweet shirts that Scott was nice enough, and the TruExact family was nice enough to give us. So certainly find us there on social media, including Instagram, Twitter, and all things, obviously, all things wrestling related. So we're out of time for today. I'll see you next week for the prediction show, my friend, and hope you have a great afternoon.
You too. See you later.
Thanks, brother.